Okay, it looks like we have quite a good group. Are all of our alumni here? I see. I don't know if Alex is on or Michael Garcia. Um,
Mike is, he just joined.
okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Um, and I know Alex will be here. So I want to briefly thank all of our admitted students. There's Mike. Hi, Mike. For joining us today. This is really the beginning of a very exciting time for all of us at YSPH as we begin to welcome our new incoming class. The joy for me in doing this is that I remember all of these amazing alumni from their admissions process from the time, some of them more specifically than others, but I remember them all well from the time they were all like you, considering applying, the anxiety of applying, then the sort of excitement, but confusion about getting in and where do I go and what suits me best, who's going to deliver on my educational and career goals. What's it going to look like when I get out? One of the things we've certainly seen over the last few years is there's been more and more of an interest in what is this degree going to allow me to do when I leave YSPH. And so the reason I can do my job is I've seen the results on the other end. Due to the talent and the passion and the commitment of these great alumni, but also thanks to Kelly and Felicia for the great guidance that they give our students from the Career Management Center as students navigate through our program. So I'm going to turn this over to them. And I just want to thank our alumni. I'll thank you again at the end, but it fills me with such joy to see you all. So Felicia and Kelly, here you go.
All right, thank you so much, Mary. And welcome everybody, all of our admitted students. We're excited to be here with you today and hopefully give you some really helpful and actionable information. Welcome to all the panelists, Drew, MK, Ori, Mike, and Alex. It's great to see you.
So nice to see you.
You haven't aged a bit. And so we're going to Kelly and I are going to we have our sort of list of questions that we'd like to ask you to share information about your YSPH experience and your post-YSPH career trajectories. So we will help guide that discussion. We'll either call on you, but also feel free to sort of just volunteer your answers so that we can sort of keep the panel going. We will leave plenty of time at the end, I hope, Mary, for some Q&A. And feel
Most
free
definitely.
to. Okay, great. And then Kelly will be monitoring the chat function. So if you have a specific question that comes up in reference to what one of our panelists has said, please feel free to submit it via the chat. We're here to answer your questions and make sure that, as our dean said, that this particular program is the right fit for you. It's a very important decision. So without further ado, thank you so much to all our panelists. Like I said, it's really great to see all of you. So if we can start off this discussion, I would love for each of you, again, to introduce yourselves. Please indicate what department you graduated from at YSPH, and tell us where you work and just a little bit about your current role. And was this your first position after YSPH? So Drew, why don't we start with you?
All right, thank you, Felicia, Mary, Kelly. First of all, I'd say thank you for having myself and I think all of the alumni on this panel, and good morning and afternoon to all the potential students. This is an exciting time and happy to play a role in it. So my name's Drew Weil. I was a student at YSPH from 2014 to 16 with Mike and Ore, so great to see you both. I'm now at UCLA Health, where I work as a manager of hospital operations, which is admittedly kind of a funky catch-all title, but the way you can think of it as is bit project manager, bit chief of staff or chief operating officer. This is the second role that I've had here following an administrative fellowship.
Great, thank you so much. Ore?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to be able to see Alicia, Kelly, and Mary. It's so exciting to be part of this. So thank you so much for the invitation. I also was a classmate of Drew, as he just highlighted before. So I graduated class of 2016 from YSPH. I actually was a social and behavioral sciences student during my time at Yale. But since graduating from there, I actually worked at Booz Allen Hamilton, the military health division. And then currently I serve as a consultant at GE Healthcare Partners. So I work in hospital operations, as well as just different areas, using analytics to be able to transform a health system. So looking forward to be able to discuss further how I was able to go from my journey as an SBS student to where I am now.
Great, thank you so much. How about you, MK?
Echoing all of the panelists before me, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. And good morning and good afternoon to everyone on the call. I graduated from YSPH in 2019. I was in social and behavioral sciences as well. And I went on actually after YSPH to do another advanced degree in education policy. And I work currently for the Secretary of Education in Massachusetts, doing some education healthcare policy joint work through some cross-secretariat initiatives for the state of Massachusetts.
Great, thank you so much. Mike?
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me, and so nice to see so many familiar faces, especially from class of 2016. Glad we're representing strong here today. I was a part of the policy concentration at YSPH. Since then, I've been working with the New York City Health Department, primarily focusing on food policy and program development and implementation. So it spans a pretty wide range of any food insecurity, food and health related, or food and environmental, not environmental like impact, but more of like food environment landscape projects that the city does and policies that we are considering or responding to from the local legislative bodies. So it has been a great experience, and I look forward to answering some questions.
Great, thank you so much. Alex?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I graduated not too long ago in 2019 with my dear friend MK. After graduating, I was fortunate enough to get a health policy fellowship, which brought me to DC, where I did my placement with the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Back in June of 2020, I was fortunate enough to transition to a permanent role as her policy advisor, and I cover issues related to public health, health coverage, other health issues. And then during the pandemic, I was kind of pulled into the unemployment insurance world, and so I've worked on that as well. My day-to-day work is kind of comprised of taking meetings with stakeholders like hospitals, patient groups, insurers, writing memos for the speaker to keep her apprised of any new policy issues that arise, and working with committees to design legislation. And as you can imagine, most of the past year has mostly been COVID response packages. So thanks so much, and looking forward to answering some more questions.
Great, thank you so much, Alex. So a lot of the sort of questions and things that we'd like you to discuss during this short panel discussion is your public health, your healthcare career journeys. So for many students, that career journey begins with their summer internship at YSPH, and the summer internship practice-based experience is a very, very important part of the MPH degree, very, very important here at Yale. So I'd love for each of you to talk a little bit about your summer internship and any sort of really transformative practice-based experience that you had while you were a student here at Yale. And anyone feel free to sort of begin. So I don't have to call on you.
All right, I'll call on you. How about MK? How about you go first?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about it. So kind of two pieces to this. The first is the summer internship experience, which I think is something that I really valued about my experience at YSPH. I actually worked as a Yale President's Public Service Fellow, which was a fellowship across Yale's campus that qualified me for it met the criteria for the internship, and I was placed at a community partner organization within New Haven that looks at an early Head Start model through family childcare. So I think a lot about the intersection of education and healthcare. And that was a really great opportunity for me. I got to stay on with the organization and work in some part-time capacity for my second year. And I really enjoyed that. And I think other things that I engaged in beyond the internship experience were just a lot of really valuable aspects. I got to do some work at the Child Study Center, which is part of the med school. and a number of other things that were really important experience-linked learning opportunities.
Great, thank you so much. All right, you want to talk about your summer internship?
Yeah, happy to. So I'm a social and behavioral sciences student. I actually did an internship through the Global Health Leadership Institute. I'm not sure if they're still called that now. And so I went to England and worked at the North Hertfordshire NHS Trust, and Drew can correct me because we did the internship together. But where I was primarily placed was actually working in the OR, so trying to figure out how to see areas of efficiency and where are some of those workflow processes that we can be able to see in terms of how to get a patient into the OR in an adequate manner, when is a patient anesthetized, and what are some of those workflows that go into that. So ironically, that is actually what I'm doing now. So it was a great stepping stone in terms of when I came in as an SBS student, I actually was working in the area of HIV. So I had worked for some time before I started at YSPH. As an HIV test counselor, I worked in the community, especially adolescents that were high risk for STDs as well as other factors. And so during YSPH, I think it was imperative for me because I was able to explore a lot of different areas that I had an interest in that were different than where I had come from. So I think that internship allowed me to learn more about healthcare operations in terms of how to be not only understand how it works in a hospital and who are some of those stakeholders there, but now that I'm doing that work and I'm able to lean on a lot of my experience during that time to be able to inform and make recommendations and be able to talk to not only individuals in the C-suite, but also techs, nursing staff. So I think it was just very informative for me to be able to explore during my time there.
Great, thank you so much. And that's a great segue into Drew talking about your summer experience in with the NHS.
Yeah, no corrections. The East and North Hertfordshire NHS Trust was a wonderful experience. My experiences were a little bit different in that they were focused a little bit more on the community and the East and North Hertfordshire NHS local health economy. Specifically looking at palliative care interventions and advanced care planning, moving further and further upstream and trying to keep patients out of the hospital. I'll also kind of take a step back from the internship itself and speak to how we found the internship or how the internship came onto my radar, which I think also speaks to just Yale and the School of Public Health as a whole and its kind of uniqueness. New Haven, Connecticut, for those of you who don't know, is only 2 hours away from Boston, Massachusetts. And one Saturday afternoon, I went to Boston to hear Don Berwick, the former administrator of CMS, speak. And I didn't know it at the time, but Don Berwick had also published a really seminal report on the NHS in England. And here's a super wise man, and he admonished all of us that there's so much to learn from the NHS and to learn from England and to learn from what is socialized healthcare, for lack of more prescriptive or more precise words. And so I walked away from that and said, man, I gotta get there. And it was from coming back and talking with people like Felicia and Dr. Howie Foreman and Zach Cooper and others, and then ultimately the GHLI, like Lori mentioned, that this fabulous opportunity just kind of came onto the radar, and it delivered in almost every single way. And I still have memories and insights that I reflect on to this day. So it was a great opportunity.
And
Great,
Drew,
thank you so much.
And Drew recruited another student into our cohort through his time in London, right? No, I'm kidding.
And Dr. John Nadikam then came over to New Haven the next year.
So before we hear from Mike and Alex, I just want to clarify. So for those of you, our admitted students, GHLI is the Global Health Leadership Institute, and we have established internship programs that they have in England, as well as other, other parts of the world. So for those of you interested in global health, or even those of you who just want to have some global fieldwork experience, that's a great opportunity. It's a partnership and a collaborative relationship that we've been working on for years. So each year we have more placements. So just something to keep in mind for those of you who are interested in global health. Mike, Alex, how about you guys?
I can go unless Mike wants to go. Yeah, so for my summer internship, I ended up actually coming to DC. DC is a very it's a tough world to break into. It's about connections and relationships and stuff like that, which I had none of. So I spent a lot of time kind of cold calling. I used a lot of my professors to kind of like put me in touch with people who knew people to have those conversations. And was fortunate enough to get an internship on the House Appropriations Committee on their subcommittee that works on health and funds HHS, which was a great experience. I kind of got the itch to kind of come back to DC and work on policy. So that was a great experience. I did want to also kind of note the emphasis on practicums throughout my second year, and I think you also have the opportunity to do it in your first year. I didn't say this in the first part, but I was in the healthcare management department, but also spent a lot of time in the health policy department. So in my second year, I did the health policy practicum under Professor Shelley Jabal, and we were able to get great internships working in the state legislature, working in the commissioner's office. And it allowed us to really apply a lot of what we had been learning in class kind of simultaneously in the real world. And it kind of had this added benefit of you could kind of do two birds, one stone, where like for a final project in a class, you could do a topic that you're actually working on for your practicum. So it was a great program, and one that is really emphasized for students to engage in while they're at YSPH.
Great, thank you, Alex. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, and I'm happy to be going after Alex because I think we have a lot of similar experiences in that. I also was in DC for my internship with the FDA Center for Food Policy and Applied Nutrition, and I would reiterate the point that DC is a harder place to get into than others that I've experienced, and I was able or fortunate enough to get my internship with the FDA through a professor at YSPH at the time, Dr. Susan Main, who's now the director of that center. So I would encourage everyone who, especially those of you who are interested in policy, and I think management is similar as well, to really, if you join YSPH, to go head first into relationships and really try to foster and create relationships that you can not only to make those connections, but also to have people that really can mentor you and guide you in the process of internships and practicums. Shelley Jabal was another great mentor and advisor of mine who, again, helped get me a practicum with the Hartford Food System. So for about 4 months, I was working with them to create a food policy council alignment plan for the state, which is something that, again, just comes out of working hands-on and more collaboratively in those spaces, because I think policy, especially, and from what I've learned and from younger hires that I've had join my team, so much of it is starting to get a familiarity with the work itself and the process of the work itself. And there's obviously a great deal of information you can learn from classwork, but applying that I think is so much more valuable. So I was grateful for my opportunity at FDA to really start getting a sense of not only the rulemaking process at the federal level, but also the legislative process, and just understanding the relationship between an executive body versus other parts of the government, because I didn't have government experience going into my time at YSPH. And now working for New York City, which as a large city in the country, it functions more similarly than to larger government bodies than a local government. So all of that has been very helpful in my time.
Awesome, thank you so much. Now I would like to sort of ask all of you sort of how YSPH prepared you for the path that you've taken since graduation. You've all touched on that in your obviously transformative summer internship experiences, but if you can talk a little bit more sort of about classes, about particular events, resources.
Organizations like student
right, or organizations. All right, why don't we begin with you?
Yes, happy to. So I would probably describe myself as, when I was at YSPH, as you could sign me up for anything. So everyone kind of knew me that I wanted to go ahead and just try anything that I could, whether it was being a TS or doing the internship that was a little bit different than what I had experience in. So I think for me, not only being able to have those experiences, both in terms of being a TS and different for different courses, you can also be able to use that to be able to bolster your own education as well. But also for me, I think a lot of the courses so from what I do right now, I'm heaving into analytics, and something that I didn't think I was ever going to really use. So stats, of course, is very important for me. Intro to Global Health. I'm mistaking the name for that, but that was, Richard Fenwick was the instructor, and that was a good way for me to be able to look at a health issue from multiple different lenses. So that was really important for me as I started to build my own career, especially now. And then what was important for me too, and we touched on it in terms of Alex and Mike, is that we, you all have introductory courses to different things, to just kind of get a lay of the land in terms of the public health foundation. And health policy was such an interesting class for me because I hadn't had that exposure at all prior to coming to YSPH. And so being able to not only pick your instructor's brain during class, but I actually would talk to Chima because I was going to a different country. I mean, I had actually grown up in England for a short amount of time when I was younger, but not being able to completely immerse myself in a health system. And so prior to me going there, I would talk to him about, okay, so how does this work here in the States versus there? Okay, so you're telling me I can look at it from this lens or this lens. So I feel like, YSPH, the beauty of just how, their instructors are always there to be able to answer your questions. They were always available. And I love talking, I still do. So I would always just say, hey, can I come to your office and, just kind of pick your brain about this? And I think that's just what I always felt is the community aspect. And I was a member of the Emerging Majority Student Association, which is EMSA, short. And then I'm actually a member of the equivalent to the alumni version. So I'm actually the chair of that similar organization now. And so I've been able to still talk to the same instructors, be able to collaborate with and network with other alumni. That's how I've been able to get my own positions, actually, both at Booth Allen Hamilton. After I graduated, as we talked about DC is a beast. It was very hard to be able to get my first job there, but through just networking, I was able to have an alumni really help me get my foot in the door, and also being at GE Healthcare now too. So I think it's just, they take care of their own. And that's one thing that I can always say, and even can say now, which is crazy to think 5 years later, that it's a place where that they value you as a student, and the sky's the limit in terms of what you want to go after.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Anybody else like to contribute some pearls of wisdom?
I would just echo what was just shared. It resonated with me. The faculty is incredibly approachable. And so I think that that's something that I found most rewarding. In social and behavioral sciences, I got to do some organizing within the department. And we had faculty lunches where we were able to take faculty members out to lunch the school paid for, or the department paid for, once a semester. So you got to really have one-on-one time that wasn't necessarily in class, or if you hadn't taken a class with them. And then I would also just highlight that I think I learned a ton of tangible skills, and we could talk for hours. I'm sure all the panelists could about the classes we took at YSPH. But I also think that one thing that sets YSPH apart from other schools you may be applying to or maybe considering is that there's a huge network of courses outside of the School of Public Health that you have access to. So I took courses at the School of Management, I took courses at Yale College, I took courses at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences and Sociology, and the flexible curriculum to allow for that to happen and the processes to be already in place to make that really easy is something that I found really, really rewarding. And I think it really sets this program apart from others.
Awesome,
Yeah,
thank you.
If I can just second a lot of what MK said, just speaking about Yale as a whole, as a community as a whole, a lot of what Aura shared is true across the schools. I took a lot of courses outside of YSPH as well. The flexibility and the elective schedule in the YSPH curriculum is actually probably the biggest reason that I came, because I came from having a brief career, like a 5-year career in the private sector prior to going to YSPH, and I knew that I wanted to focus on food policy, which I do. And being able to take classes at the law school and at the School of Forestry and Environmental Science was a huge help to me, for me to build that background and get that more rounded experience on that topic matter. And all of the professors and the faculty at those schools were equally receptive and supportive. I would sit down with law professors and just ask, about policy directions as well, because there is a close overlay there. And just your access to the whole community with YSPH at the core, I think is, it was something that still is endlessly valuable for me to this day.
So can I just interject? We got a question and it was directed to Mike and other health policy. So I figured we could just ask, can you just elaborate a little bit more as how YSPH helped you get your internship and other opportunities? And if anyone wants to touch upon international health policy networks that Yale may have.
Sure, I can speak to the more domestic policy because that's really where my focus is. But for internships, there are many health policy internships across the spectrum of public health networks. So I don't want anyone to feel discouraged to us saying that DC is a challenge. It's just that it's very that's where health policy lives in this country. So there's a lot of demand there. But in my experience, working with Dr. Main was a huge help. Obviously, it was fortunate for us that she became director of that center as I was looking for my internship. But there are many services, and Felicia and Kelly are great in helping to direct to those services as well. I would say that from just from the policy standpoint, the faculty are the biggest champions you're going to have. Shelley Jabal, who was mentioned earlier, and Dr. Schlesinger, who's I believe is still the chair of the concentration. They played a huge role in just helping to not only find places, but think about what makes the most sense given your interests, which they would have a better sense of as you build relationships with them. So I would say that the larger network of looking for internships, like on the internet, is always like a good place to start. But then using those contacts or relationships that you build to either create a network within those spaces or to kind of point you in the next best direction is great. And the last thing I'll say on that is the network of alumni, which if you join YSPH, you'll have access to, and the mentorship program I think is really valuable as well. Can be very useful. One of my alumni mentors from my first year, she has worked at the health department the whole time, and I spoke to her early on to get a good sense of the department as a whole before I really pursued that. So you have many levers and channels that you can work. And the last thing I guess I would say is, especially for some of you who might be coming more recently out from undergrad, the way I view graduate school was, the coursework is obviously very important, but you equally need to focus on getting that professional networking experience, because you are getting a professional degree that will, move you forward into the next part of your career.
Thanks, Mike. I would also like to add that, through the Career Management Center, we have a career management system called, we use the Handshake platform where we post our internships and jobs. There are typically hundreds and hundreds of those over the course of an academic year. So that's usually, like a really good starting point. And that coupled with, faculty networking and then just informational interview is really a successful way to go about looking for your internship. I do want to add also that for those of you who plan on doing an unpaid internship, there is summer funding. And I think Mike, you might have been a recipient of that. A couple of people who did.
I was.
Yeah, unpaid internships is, we do have sort of a very popular, robust summer internship funding program. So just wanted to make everybody aware of that. Anybody else want to address that particular question about the resources?
So I'm happy to address the question around resources, but first, if you don't mind, Felicia, I'll go back to the original question around what skills or trainings or experiences were particularly helpful. In preparing for this morning, I was trying to jot down all the classes that I felt like I still reference or think about on a routine basis. Mm-hmm. And the list proved to be much longer than I thought, just with the classes and the content kind of running in the background almost nonstop in the day-to-day. But I think to the point that all the other panelists have made, the things that go beyond those technical skills are really the approachability of the faculty. And I think something that I learned at Yale, which is not necessarily technical, but kind of the accumulation of all of it, I credit to Dr. Betsy Bradley, who's now the president at Vassar and was a former professor within our Department of Health Policy and Management. And one time when I was meeting with her with another classmate, she shared that the greatest thing about Yale from her perspective was that it teaches students and people how to think, which sounds very broad, but once you kind of learn that, not everyone knows everything, but you just have to accumulate a number of different frameworks or lenses to look at problems and then challenge your own beliefs constantly. That's what it means to learn how to think. And so I think I walked away with Yale with a much better sense of how to think and how to problem solve. And, that came from being in classes, but it also came from your professors. And I think most importantly for me, it was also my classmates who spanned from coming straight out from undergrad to having a decade's worth or more of professional and lived experiences, and people from all corners of the globe and our own continent. It forced you to challenge your own beliefs on a daily basis. So yeah, there's a lot that can be said about the technical skills that you'll walk away with, and not to overshadow that. But I think just the soft skills of learning how to be challenged and learning how to be comfortable in discomfort is something I walked away with too.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew. Anybody else want to sort of discuss sort of what particular resources, skills that they found sort of particularly contributive to your post-graduation success? Alex, how about you?
I mean, I can add, so being in the healthcare management track, many of my courses were operations, you take accounting at the business school, you do all those sorts of classes. Then I took a lot of health policy classes, but YSPH also has a really strong core curriculum. And so, I had to take Epi 101, I had to take biostatistics. And I'm very happy I did. I could not have predicted that 6 months after graduating, I'd be, working on a once in a century pandemic. And it really was those classes and having some sort of foundation in epidemiology that, allowed me to do a lot of my work tracking the pandemic, knowing what R0 is, knowing what relative risk is, these, weird terms that only epidemiologists use. I, didn't think I was ever going to end up using them. And then they came very handy and very important to the work that I did today. So I think, in addition to, having great, structured, specialties or departments, they also have a really strong core curriculum. And I just do want to reemphasize, and maybe I'm beating a dead horse, but it's just really important. And I think it's a way that Yale stands out, is just how interdisciplinary the whole campus is. And I think that's really important, specifically being a school of public health, where inherently public health cross-cuts a ton of issues. And so for the, to have the ability without, very few barriers to take classes anywhere and to also join organizations anywhere. I was able to take a free trip to Israel and Palestine, through the Global Affairs Department. I got to tour some of their hospitals and stuff like that. I mean, I can't imagine, every place or every MPH program having that same sort of campus culture. And so I know there was a question about why this program as opposed to others, but I think that really stood out to me when I was deciding between a couple programs in the end. So sorry, I think I answered a couple different questions, but hopefully I touched on what you wanted me to.
Thanks, Alex. So we actually have gotten a lot of questions into the chat, so which I think are helpful for everybody to hear. So Kelly's going to sort of address some of those questions to our panelists.
Okay, so again, this was a little bit mentioned, but if anyone has any other pieces to add as to why they chose Yale versus other schools, but also we had two questions specifically, I think for Alex and Drew, as to why they chose the MPH with the healthcare management concentration versus an MHA. So anyone want to just jump in about why they chose MPH at Yale versus if Drew or Alex have anything specifically about the healthcare management?
So I'm happy to try and answer both simultaneously, and just kind of using my own experience as a story. Funny enough, before I decided to matriculate to Yale, I'd actually put a seat deposit down at an MHA program, another one along the East Coast. But when the letter came through from Mary saying that I was admitted to Yale, well, that's worth considering at the very least. So I actually kind of changed my entire calculus around what did I want to get out of a master's degree program, particularly a master in public health and healthcare management. And so when I was looking at master's degrees, we were only a couple of years into the Affordable Care Act being passed. And so there was a very big push, and the national conversation was really around population health social determinants of health, and really what affects someone's overall health and well-being. So the Master of Public Health and Healthcare Management seemed like a really great blend between understanding those fundamentals, what determines how well or healthy someone will be, with how do you run or manage an organization efficiently at the same time. And I think the curriculum that Dr. Foreman and others who are in the healthcare management department have pulled together with core competencies at both YSPH and SOM was really unique and not replicated by anyone else. But I think the other reason why I chose Yale was I came out to New Haven after receiving that letter and spent a day on campus with Mary and some of the current students at the time, who I think still get referenced, Dan Wald and Drew Peterson and Bo Nemelka, who have all gone on to be wildly successful in their own rights. And I spent the day with them, and I met with Howie and others. And even in minutes, you felt like you were part of the community and you were part of the family at Yale. And that was amazing to me, because Yale is this ivory tower, and then here they are just opening up the doors and letting this future student be a part of it. And so I thought that was really remarkable, and it made me eat my seat deposit that I put down somewhere else. But I think all for the good.
That was great. Thank you, Drew. And then Alex, I think that was addressed to you as well.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best, because I ended up going more the policy route, albeit policy, which still is helpful to understand health administration. But maybe I can provide a little bit of color about the HCM program. It's this really unique program that at the School of Public Health, where you have both professors at the School of Public Health and at the School of Management, and your courses the first year really straddle both schools. And so you're taking accounting, operations, competitive strategy over at the business school, while you're also taking epidemiology, biostatistics, health policy courses, health disparities courses over at the School of Public Health. And so it's this really kind of brilliantly crafted program. And I think, additionally, aside from the classes, you're also able to engage in extracurriculars at both institutions. So, during my time there, I worked also, in addition to my health policy practicum, I also did a case competition, organized a case competition over at the School of Management that focused on health services. And so it's just, I think, a great program, both in terms of how the curriculum is crafted and then also the experiences that that you kind of have at your disposal outside of that to take advantage of.
Great, thank you so much. Kelly, you want to continue with, we have some great questions that came in.
So another question was, the question is the majority of the internships in Connecticut domestically, and kind of going into that is for students who want to be outside of Connecticut. How has the Career Office helped make those connections across the United States? So, I mean, obviously Felicia and I can chime in on that, but I don't know if any of the alums want to kind of speak upon experiences that you did mostly outside of Connecticut.
Why don't we start, MK, why don't we start with you? Because you did a very seminal and prestigious experience in Connecticut. And I think by having everyone else talk a little bit, you see, first of all, there's a wide diversity. So we have students who stay in Connecticut, but really, I think in any given summer, excluding last summer, of course, we typically have students in about 23 to 25 different countries. So it's students are really do everything and anything all over the globe. But why don't we start with MK?
Sure. So to answer that question, I have friends and colleagues, and Alex and I share many of them, who were able to have internships across the country. Some of them went back to states that they're originally from. Some of them went to states that they wanted to live in and pursued living in afterwards. So those connections were made for them through the career services offices and the broader Yale network and alumni networks. But for me, I wanted to really make sure that I think there's a tension sometimes that exists between Yale and New Haven. And I was really interested in understanding what that tension is as an institution that has access to so many privileged information, and there's so much privilege associated with Yale that doesn't always trickle into the New Haven community. And I care a lot about making sure that communities are represented and communities are having access to the same information. And I really found that the purpose of the fellowship that I did was to connect Yale students to the community in really sustainable, impactful ways, so that there's a advantage for both parties. So it's through the Office of New Haven and State Affairs. And I really appreciated that experience because I was with a cohort of people working across the city, and it really made New Haven home for me. And that was something that was really important for me. I didn't start out thinking I wanted to stay in Connecticut, and I ended up not staying in Connecticut. But that internship experience was really important for me to stay in New Haven, in a community that had given me so much. I wanted to make sure that I was being a good steward of that community as well.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else want to address that or perspective, not just from their own perspective, but maybe some of their other classmates, what they remember, where they landed?
I can speak a little to that. I just thinking back to our summer, I couldn't name more than maybe 3 or 4 people who stayed in New Haven. One of the things that I thought was a little, I don't know if funny is the right word, but one of the things I've noticed in, coming from New York City before going to Yale and then going back afterwards, is that so few of my close classmates ended up staying on, the East Coast, even because Yale as such a global and national university, the opportunities really sent everyone all over the place. So I've had friends who have since, basically hopped around the Middle East and Africa. I know Aura knows who I'm talking about. I have friends who are in like Seattle, went to med school on the West Coast, others in San Francisco and again in DC. So I don't think that, being in Connecticut or outside a large city, for example, is in any way a limiting factor. And if anything, I think, Yale as a global community is pretty, it's pretty wide ranging in anywhere you could go.
And
Great,
I just
thank
wanted to
you.
add too that, of course, like we already spoken about with faculty connections and our amazing alumni, there's opportunities all over, but also with our job board, we've seen, like Felicia had said, hundreds more job and internship opportunities all over the country. So you can definitely stay in Connecticut, and there's a lot of opportunities within Yale and in the community, like MK said, but definitely you're not going to be limited in any way from going outside of the state.
And if I could just jump in here for a second, one of the panelists who was going to join us, Jonathan Smith, was on one of the EPI tracks. He was involved in a very serious accident recently, unbeknownst to us until this morning. Or we just learned of it this morning. So I just want those of you who are joining us that are in more of the EPI tracks, a lot of what our panelists are telling you pertains not just to their specific, I know some of this is very specific to management, but sort of the experiences they had at Yale overall and in looking for internships and career placements pertains to all the departments. It isn't necessarily specific to an academic area. So I just wanted those of you that are on those EPI tracks and may be concerned to know that their expertise and their experiences can speak to that as well, as can Felicia and Kelly.
Great, yeah, thank you, Mary. And it really depends on what your own particular interest is. And then that's what we work with students to help identify sort of what type of experience they want to get. And that sort of takes you in lots of different geographic locations. But that's pretty much, there are students who thought they'd never end up in Connecticut, but it turns out the experience that they want to gain being at a large research center and is the best place to do it. So why don't we go on to another question, Kelly?
Yeah, so there's a couple questions that are a little more specific. There's a couple that are for career outcomes, which I think I'd be happy, we can answer maybe on the side, but there's 2 questions that are somewhat similar. Could the panelists please share a piece of advice that they wish that they had upon matriculation? What advice would you give to future candidates prior to entering Yale? How about, go ahead, Ori. Thank you.
Yeah, I can start this one. So I think I'm originally from Ohio, and when I was applying to MPH programs, I thought I was going to stay in the sexual health and prevention world, stay within HIV research. And I think one thing I would say is be very open-minded is one of the biggest things I would say, especially given the pandemic, we all, especially consulting, I think I would be consulting virtually. I had a job where I would travel from Monday through Thursday, live the hotel life. That was what I did, and I'm based in New York City. So I think for me, had I come into YSPH thinking that was where I was going to go, I would not have, as Drew said, done the internship in England and then done a job at Booz Allen and then now working at GE Healthcare. So I think it's just more that you may think that you know what you want to do right now, but ultimately be open-minded into the opportunities that could come your way, I think. So for me, for GHLI, I actually like happened to network and meet somebody that was just amazing. And she just said, you know, I want to actually go to Ethiopia at the time for an internship. And that was what I was looking at. And she said, I think you would actually be really good for this internship in England. You and I have talked about kind of where you want to see yourself and where you want to see your career and what kind of skills you want to gain. I think this would be able to give you that. And so I just will always just say is that having worked, you all make, if you have worked or if you've done, go straight from undergrad, making you have an idea of what you want to do. But I think when opportunities come your way, keep an open mind. You never know what you could learn. And a lot of skills are transferable. So even though I was social and behavioral sciences, whenever I apply for jobs, they don't ask me that. They see an MPH and that's good to go. And it's a check mark when you move on. So I think it's just more, they'll ask you like, oh, when have you done this? And I can speak to that in terms of how I've collaborated, how I've led. And so that's just one thing I would always just say is that, you know, just take advantage of it. That's the beautiful thing about professional schools is that you get to really craft your career to be the way that you want it to be. And you're not married to it. One thing that we always say in consulting is that you own your career in a way. And I think it's just that you are able to do, there's no wrong choice in terms of what kind of internship you do. I think it's just more about the skills you're gaining.
Wonderful advice. Thank you. Why don't all our panelists share sort of what advice they would give of people sort of on the cusp of making this important decision about which grad school to attend?
And also another way to maybe think of it is if there's anything that you maybe would have done a little differently while you were at Yale, now that you've kind of had some experience and looking back.
I can jump in next.
Sure.
I guess the first thing I would say, and kind of repeating a little bit what Aura just shared, but I would just try to avoid putting yourself into a bubble or a box or anything like that once you're in a program, because especially at Yale, you know, I tried to be as involved as I could and was fortunate to get a lot of really great friendships outside of the School of Public Health as well as within. And what that did was really expose me to, you know, obviously a huge number of just really brilliant people, but also different perspectives on things. And kind of like what Drew was saying earlier about, you know, challenging yourself to think differently or get, you know, a different mindset than you think you might have. That was really important to me, because when you go into, you know, any professional world, you have so many people coming from so many different backgrounds that to understand, you know, where they may be coming from, or just understand the different angle on especially when it comes to policy, different perspectives there, you know, I think that's invaluable. And things that maybe I wish I knew prior to, I mean, I guess, so I applied as an SBS student, then I switched after my first semester. So I probably would have just applied as a policy student from the start. Not that it was difficult to make that change, but it would have been easier. And, you know, I think just have a good sense of, you know, what you're hoping to do and move forward with. But again, don't feel so like boxed in or married to it, because, you know, I really love what Aura said about owning your profession or your career, because I think it's so true. You know, everything falls on you, and not in a bad way, but it falls on you once you're, you know, really out of school in a true way to really shape where you want to go. And I think everything you can learn in grad school, I really think lends to that.
I'll add one thing to that. I think that there's something really special at Yale, and I think there's something really special that even if you are somebody, so I came in, I was a former classroom teacher, I taught middle school science. I came in thinking I care a lot about this intersection of health and education. I'm just not sure how that will play out other than understanding education as a social determinant of health. And the opportunities that I received were nurtured as well. I remember sitting the first day in SBS, we were in a room, we were kind of all going around the room talking about our interests. People had such diverse interests. And I was like, where do I fit? Where do I fit? And then I realized like I fit here too. And I think that Yale's a place that nurtures specific interests, and those interests can grow and they can change over time. But the nurturing happened at the Child Study Center for me. It happened in other courses. It happened with faculty who had happened to work on this project. They just didn't explicitly call it that. And so there's a lot of connections that I found and made, and my very niche interest was very much nurtured.
I'll just add my perspective and also share some of my classmates' perspectives. I don't know if you all are meeting with Dr. David Paul-Thiel today, but he has a famous line that I think he uses every year, that the walls of Yale are intentionally porous, meaning that you should and you're encouraged to pass between professional school to professional school. And that always really resonated with me. And with two of my closest friends and colleagues who I went to school with, one of them arrived after working on the Vermont Public or Healthcare Exchange. And he came in and he said, you know what, I want to do startups. And he was encouraged to do startups. He learned how to code in Python and R and all these different languages and coding languages that I could never even think of. And then went on afterwards to create a successful startup that went on to be bought out successfully. So he had that kind of seed that MK and Ore and Mike all talked about and was nurtured. Another classmate was an emergency room charge nurse in New York City. And he did a complete 180 pivot and then went on to dabbling in private equity and healthcare private equity and investment banking and internal consulting and a number of other just weird kind of very different things. But all those passions were nurtured, and he found the resources that they both found the resources that they needed to grow them. Before I arrived at Yale, the advice I got from those current students that I mentioned earlier, they were take advantage of the things outside of the classroom. And so I think everyone's already shared a lot about taking full advantage of things outside of the classroom. But if you make your way to New Haven, which is actually an awesome city too, take full advantage of it, including the bars and the restaurants and all the fun stuff outside of the professional life. There's just so much to do.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else want to add to that?
I don't think I had too much to add because I think they highlighted a lot of good things, but just a couple actionable items that I just want to highlight. I didn't personally take advantage of my first year, some of the amazing, I think, tools and programmatic things that both Felicia and Kelly do and Mary do that I did the second year that I wish I had started sooner. So some of those things are career treks. They bring people, they bring a group of students to like DC, and they have them meet with all these different organizations, whether it's global health groups or the health management associates, to kind of help you build out your network in maybe a city that you want to be at for your internship or after school. There's the alumni student mentorship program where you get to kind of connect with two alumni that you get to really build like actually close relationships with. And I just think, oftentimes I looked at it as only looking for the opportunities that really benefited maybe somewhere I knew I wanted to be after I graduated for an internship. But I think more so just I would recommend that everyone take advantage of those just to start building out your network. Maybe it's not an area exactly that you think you're going to be in, but you never know how your career path is going to go, and you may run into someone you connected with 10 years down the line, and it really will benefit you. So I just would really, trumpet and highlight some of the programmatic things that Felicia, Kelly, and Mary do to really start taking advantage of those things from day one when you guys get to YSPH.
And if
Thank
I can
you,
just add
Alex.
one thing real quick.
Sure.
Drew's comment is so spot on about some of his classmates or shared classmates of ours who came from different places. And in my own experience, like I mentioned, I had worked before grad school. I spent 5 years doing brand and advertising consulting for just global consumer brands, and was just not at all in the public health field. And I recognized that to enter the food policy space where I wanted to head, I needed something like a MPH from YSPH to do that. So I would, and I think this is true for all the things on campus as well. I would just say, if you're considering something or looking at something you think might be useful or interesting, I would say just go for it, because I'm very grateful that I decided to go to YSPH, and I think it's set me on the path that I wanted to be on. And even in grad school, there were Drew and I were members of the Graduate Student Senate, and if you had ever asked me if I would have done that even the month before grad school, I would say like, what are you talking about? No way. But I just kind of like saw the email we got about it and said, sure, why not? And I just went for it, and it was great. And it was really another one of those things that was really helpful in getting to know and meet so many other people across the university.
Thank you, Mike. So I think we're running out of time. Mary, do we have time for another quick question, or we should wrap up?
No, you've got time for another quick question.
Okay,
You're doing
so
great.
we'll
Yeah, I have I think one more that we got two in kind of different wordings. Can anyone, any alum, talk a little bit about how they balanced the cost of their degree, whether if they worked while they were getting their MPH, and kind of how that's, you know, still a factor or not a couple of years after graduation? Because I know that that's, you know, it's an investment, it's a big piece to consider. Does anyone want to touch upon that?
Could. So when I chosen YSPH, I actually wanted to be a teaching assistant. So the process may be a little bit different now, but I actually was a TF throughout I think most of the time that I was at Yale. And so I had reached out to the psychology department and expressed, you know, why I was, I guess, qualified for it. And so and that was the best position for me, given that I just had to attend a class, be able to hold a reflection session once in a while, but it was fun. So I got to be able to collaborate with meet other students from other schools. And then for me too, so I also was a grad affiliate, which provides you with free meals. I love that once in a while. So I was a grad affiliate for one of the colleges too. And then I think in terms of just thinking through paying for school, I think that was an option. They also have research assistant positions. So they also post as well that students can take advantage of. Some of my friends had taken advantage of that too. And then thinking through in terms of a job. So I had actually, with consulting, that's one of the things, just thinking through, okay, what's the position that I would like to, you know, go after. That was the way that I wanted my career to go even before I left YSPH. But also I was able to apply for scholarships. So I actually was able to be granted a foreign language area studies fellowship, which I believe is what it's called. I always forget once in a while, but that was just able to help me as well pay for portions of my graduate degree. So there are scholarship opportunities. Whether it's through, you know, YSPH or even the larger Yale community. So I was able to be granted that through the larger Yale community. So I think that's just one of the things where I said, keep an open mind. If you hear something, just ask, hey, am I qualified for it? Apply for it. And so my friends were able to get other scholarships in different ways too. But the school is really there to be able to hear your own unique experience and be able to help you get there. So one thing that I do want to add, and I know we're running out of time, is that Felicia and Kelly were really helpful for me because I was SBS and it took me a while to really think about what that career was going to be like post-graduation. They talked with me. They listened to me in terms of, I'm looking for this. Okay, let's draft your resume this way. Highlight these type of skills. When you're interviewing, here's how I would respond to that answer. So I think it's just really being able to figure out your voice and do it confidently, because it's just fake it till you make it is what I always say. So, and I do that now even in my job when I don't know an answer. I'm like, I can figure that out for you. So I think it's, you know, they're really there to take care of you. And that's the beauty of our school. And I think a lot of us are a testament to just where we are now today.
Wonderful advice. Thank you.
Just to build off of her real quick, yeah, I just want to emphasize the TA opportunities. They're like everyone who wants to TA is able to TA essentially. And like your first year too, you know, you have to wait till your second year to TA for your first year classes, but you still, your first year are able to TA for undergraduate classes that you may have had expertise in from your undergraduate career. So really there's, you know, immense opportunities for TAing. I also think, you know, the scholarship opportunities are great. You're coming from a very, you know, well-known institution, very well-known program, and Felicia and Kelly and other people in the school are they're very good at flagging scholarships for the student body. So I was able to get a Winston scholarship, which then actually led me on to my fellowship. So it actually, you know, is why I am where I am, is because I saw a scholarship that was posted that helped me with my tuition as well. So I want to flag that.
I just want to add to that. I don't know what the actual going rate is for the TF positions, but the TF positions at Yale pay very nicely. Probably much more competitively than a lot of other institutions. So that's why they're very much in demand. Anybody else want to offer some, before we wrap up, any just last parting advice about sort of how to defray the cost of your expensive but worthwhile education? All right, so again, feel free to, you know, submit questions to me or to Kelly. We hope to see you all at the sort of career roundtable on Wednesday from 1 to 2. So we'll go into sort of a deep dive about what resources the career office is engaged in. Want to thank all of our panelists. It was wonderful, wonderful to see all of you. just makes us really happy to see how successful you are and how what good use you've put your degrees. So again, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
And I put my email in the chat box, and I imagine my fellow alumni would be as open with their emails as well. But feel free to reach out to us directly if we can be helpful while you guys are
Thank you.
making your
Thank you,
decision.
Alex. I had a few people who wanted to reach out to all of you, so
Great.
thank you for sharing.
Good luck with your work and your lives, everyone. We miss you all. Can't wait to see you at 47 College one of these days, so we can thank you personally. And everyone stay safe and well. Bye. now.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you. Bye,
thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Sign
Thank
off.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks, Ore. I'll be in touch.
You're welcome. Yes, talk soon, Mary. Bye.
Alrighty.
Take care. Bye.
Send me pictures of life.